This is USCHO Weekend Review. And here is your host, Ed Trefsker.
Welcome to USCHO Weekend Review for Monday, December 8th, 2025. I'm Ed Trefsker alongside Jim Conley and Derek Schooley. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Las Vegas. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 for tickets. Well, it was the heavyweight showdown, two 15-round bouts, I guess you could say, over the weekend, Michigan and Michigan State. The visiting team won both games. Friday at Munn Arena in East Lansing, a 3-0 win by the Wolverines over the Spartans. And then Saturday back at Yost, Michigan State downing Michigan 3-1. Did we learn anything from this? Can we tell who's the better team out of this, or are they just 1A and 1B neck and neck, tied at the top? What do we know?
How great is that to say heavyweight battle between Michigan and Michigan State? It's been a long time coming to be able to say. I mean, this is the old CCHA back in the 2000s, late 90s, all the Red Berenson, Ron Mason days. And I was excited to see this weekend, and to see a split doesn't surprise me one bit. But to see the way it went down, the visiting team winning was actually kind of a surprise to me. And to see the way it happened with low scoring, I guess that finally a team got to Michigan and kept them below their average of 4 goals. You would think 4 goals per game, not 4 goals on a weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I look at, the way that this series played out. Out here in the East, I was talking to people, and they were saying how on Friday night after they covered their games, journalists were saying, I went home and watched the Michigan State game on DVR. I had to watch that game. That's how good of a game that was. And that's the whole weekend. It played out perfectly. The question, though, now for me is, where do I go with my votes in the poll? And I actually had to go with Wisconsin as number one, because I'm sitting there saying Wisconsin's doing everything right. They crushed Notre Dame this weekend. Michigan State both lose. So I guess now I'm really confused, really, who should be number one. For me, it's Wisconsin.
Another one from the Jeff Sauer era of coming back to the back in the day. You'd have, those were the dean of coaches. Like when I was playing, Jeff Sauer, Ron Mason, Red Berenson. That was it of like college hockey, the deans of coaching. And now you're talking about all of them in the top 3 potentially. I mean, that's, to see those teams back, that's a big story.
And the poll's going to come out just after we record this, but we're going to see the fun situation of Michigan staying number one, but Wisconsin getting more first place votes by a couple. Maybe it was yours and mine, Jim, that were the two, but I was with you. It's like, how do you decide between those two teams right there? Well, while Wisconsin's doing what it's doing with only 12 losses, couple ties in there too. But the Badgers have really rebounded from a rough season last year in an emphatic way. So that's huge.
And I think when you look at your poll ballot in this situation, any of those 3 teams worthy. And you might even find other teams. We'll get into this of who's still hot and who's not and all of that. But there's other teams maybe that could go in there as well.
Yeah, and speaking of the poll ballot, just an aside here. When you see a weekend where just about everybody who is in the top 20 had splits or even got swept in a couple of cases, like Maine at the hands of New Hampshire, how do you rank teams at that point? You can't move everybody down who loses. So and who sneaks in? It was a tough ballot for me this week.
It was for me as well. I mean, I always, when I'm kind of trying to figure out who I'm going to place where, I look at the past weekend results, but I always do put in the last column, I put what the current record of that team is, because I don't want to just get skewed by what happened in the previous weekend only. I think that having some sort of qualifier of where that team is and the overall standings makes sense as well.
Well, you talk
and
about
who they lost to.
You talk about splits though, or not nobody. I mean, and I lobbied for this one in the show notes is Minnesota Duluth taking 4 or 6 points from Western Michigan. I mean, that's a big one. They're number 4 right now. They're quietly on the outside looking. We talk about the big 3 of a Wisconsin, Michigan, Michigan State. Who had that on their bingo card? Minnesota Duluth being on the cusp of being in the top 4. I mean, maybe top 15, but not the top 4, not the top 5.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that. And meanwhile, we've talked a little bit about this. It seems to be, in aggregate, a little bit of a down year for Hockey East, but one team that seems to have gotten things turned around a little bit is Boston College. They had wins over UMass Lowell 3-1 both nights. Is this finally the team that maybe we were expecting for Greg Brown when it was looking a little difficult, maybe back in October?
I think so. The month of November was good to Boston College. They've won eight out of their last 9 games. They do go into break now, and when they come out, they'll go to that quick trip holiday tournament out in Wisconsin. That's got a tough field. Wisconsin and Western Michigan both there. They'll do so without at least 3 players and without their head coach. They'll all be at World Juniors. So that's something to kind of put in the back of your head for when BC comes back. So I guess going 8 of 9, winning 8 of 9 going into the break, that was really strong. And I go back, I called the Saturday game this week between Lowell and BC, but I've watched both games. And Friday, Lowell didn't play well, and BC that was when I felt like they were kind of handed. Saturday, I thought Lowell played a great game. BC had to be at the top of their game, and Cloutier, their goaltender, was really, really strong. I thought that's been a point that has turned for them, is their goaltending, their defense, team defense has gotten a lot better in the month of November.
We've been hard on the Boston schools. We have been, and I think you said deservedly so. I don't know which one of you said it, but we've been hard on them a little bit so far. To see them, kind of take a step to right the ship going into break. Everybody wants to feel good about themselves going into break. And you can always, whether you take the last game before break or whatever, but this isn't going to be easy because Western Michigan's a full squad that they're going to get because they're not having anybody at the Spangler Cup. They're not having anybody at the World Juniors. This is a full squad that they're going to face coming into the quick trip. I think the other team there is, if I can remember, Lake Superior. I think that's the one. So yeah, Wisconsin, Western Michigan, BC, and Lake Superior, I think.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because you do have some teams. I think maybe one of the teams that's going to be most depleted coming into this break time is Penn State, and they have planned ahead. Their last game was November 22nd. They don't play again until January 3rd. So maybe just about everybody makes it back by then. But, back to Boston College, I still maintain we're not going to know enough about the NPI until enough teams have had 12 weighted wins, where you start taking off some wins that hurt you. But even so, Hockey East, fairly low in non-conference winning percentage. It's above 500, but not in the 600, 700 range of NCHC and Big Ten. Eagles right now, as we're recording, sitting at number 16 in the NPI. If they don't win Hockey East with that, they would be out of the tournament. What are they? I mean, are they in a situation now where they've just got to just kind of reel off a bunch of wins to get themselves in a comfortable position? And is there a comfortable position for anybody in Hockey East right now?
There's very little room for error. Let's put it that way. That's the better way of saying it. None of these teams have much of a ramp to maybe lose a game here and there and not worry. You're not going to rattle off 3 or 4 consecutive losses in the second half if you're in Hockey East and expect to get an at-large bid. So it does feel a little bit of desperation for anybody in that conference, but at the same time, that the conference, they're above 500. They're probably going to get at least 1 at-large, maybe 2. I don't see 3 this year, probably. But if you can put together a couple of good second halves for 2 to 3 teams, then they'll start taking the leap up the NPI. I think by the end of it, you're going to see 3 Hockey East teams in the top 15 of the NPI season.
What's
season
really
end.
interesting to me, and this is somewhat in the kind of, you brought it up that Penn State isn't playing it for a while, and like we're on a break right now too, so we'll practice on Wednesday, but then we don't come back to the 26th, so really a 15-day break. We're the only sport that takes breaks like this. Basketball takes finals, but then they start playing, and they play all the way through. I'd like to see hockey try to take a week break around Christmas, but have less. I know there's a World Juniors, and I know it's been historical, but we've got to do something. We can't continue to take breaks like this for this long, because I think it loses some interest in our game. I think it loses some time that we can be taking advantage of. People doing different things. I know students are gone. I know different things like that. But right now, I don't like the fact that we're taking from December. Like we played December, I guess we played December 6th. We don't play till December 30th now. And for Penn State not to play the whole month of December, I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong for our sport. I think that's wrong for scheduling purposes. I think that something needs to be done. I would be for, a week break. You take your finals and then you get back into playing hockey. Then you take a couple days, 4 or 5 days for Christmas, and then you get back to playing hockey. I think this is way too long that teams are taking for breaks.
I 100% endorse what you just said there. This break is really long. And I had noticed that Penn State break a couple of weeks ago and saw how long it was. It just never made sense to me, but I get it. If you know that you're going to lose World Junior players, you know that you're going to lose your coach, you're going to lose, Spangler Cup players, you're losing a lot. So you're trying to schedule around that, but I don't like these breaks. It is too long, Derek.
We have
wholly
finals this
agree
week.
with you.
Okay, so let's not play this weekend, but we can come back next week and play. And then we've got Christmas. Okay, then we could take a week then, and then come back then. And they can go home after we play, and they can have a week at home. I think no other pro hockey doesn't do it. Junior hockey doesn't do it. I mean, it's completely weird. Basketball doesn't do it. All sports don't do it. But in college hockey, for some reason, we've got 3 to 4 week breaks. The players love it, but then it makes our product doesn't look great when it comes back. I mean, what did Jerry York used to call it? Christmas hockey?
Yeah.
I mean, our product doesn't look as good as it needs to look when it comes back. And that's when people get hurt, because you come back and you practice on the 26th, and some people play the 27th or 28th. And we need to do better for the student athletes and for our fans, because we are getting all this publicity right now for college hockey, and you don't want to burn that.
Yeah, you're right. This coming weekend, there are 4 weekend series in the NCHC and 3 non-conference or exhibition series coming up, and that's it. And then the following weekend, there's 1 game, and then that's it. So yeah, it's almost completely cut off after this past weekend. Moving on to one other story here before the break. Dartmouth, they are still the story because they're still the only unbeaten team. And I know there's somebody who's a BU fan, a BU blogger, who's just waiting for his circle of suck. He needs 1 team to lose and 1 team to win, and then you can complete that whole circle of teams beating each other. But Dartmouth, even though it wasn't the strongest competition this weekend, they're 10-0. They're beating the teams they need to beat. 7-3 over Brown on Friday with 4 goals from Hayden Stavroff, and then a 6-1 win over Yale on Saturday. So they still sit atop the NPI, or maybe have gotten moved out of that by Michigan, but they are right at the top there. They still got a lot of games left to play. They still have 19 games left on their schedule. But, is Dartmouth, especially after an upset of Quinnipiac over the weekend, is Dartmouth now the odds-on favorite for the ECAC?
I think it should be. 10-0 at this point. They're playing really well. They're winning the games that are in front of them, and that's all you can say. I mean, Stavroff, that you have to bring up the name Hugh Jessamine. That's the last player to score 4 goals for Dartmouth, and that was in 2003. 22 years ago. You're talking about this is their best program start since the 1940s, and that was a season where they didn't lose a game. This is a Dartmouth team. Everything has gone so well out of the gate. They have a big test this week with UNH, a UNH team that just swept Maine on the road. So this maybe is the weekend where we finally can say, oh, Dartmouth had to play the tough games. Well, they've played the games they've played, and they've won the games they've won. And I can't take anything away for that.
Unbelievable start for Dartmouth. We have. But the last 3 weeks, we've been talking about this. Congratulations, undefeated. Great job by Reed Cashman. But there's other great stories out there right now, and we just keep going down this road. And I know, Jimmy, we talked about this before. I know this is kind of our counterpoint segment, because people are tired of hearing about Dartmouth, and I'm taking up some of the internet frustration or internet going on and on about Dartmouth here a little bit. I think it's a great story, but I think we've hammered this pretty good the last couple weeks, and you've got a great point to go against that. So I just made my point. Jimmy, you want to go with your point, because it's an excellent one.
The schools has to explain how the show works before we can do it anymore. Now, so yes, the point is that how often do we have any team that starts 10-0? Let's start there. And then how often do we really highlight the strong teams in conferences like the ECAC, the CCHA, or Atlantic Hockey? Yes, I know, Steve Metcalf would call this Atlantic Hockey Weekly because of how much we talk about that league, but we don't talk about teams in the ECAC except for Cornell and Quinnipiac. We throw Harvard in every now and again. This is an unbelievable story. This team is number one in the NPI. The season ends today. They only have, what do they have left? 17 or 20 games left, I guess. Maybe they have 30 this year, I think. So they have 20 games left, but let's say that they win 75% of their games, they're going to get to the end of the season with just 5 losses. That team is going to be a top 10 NPI team. They could probably be a top 5 NPI team. I think that's a big topic.
Agreed.
Well, and it's going to continue to be a big topic until they have a loss. If we come back in after the break and they've got 12 wins or 14 wins, then it's still going to be a story. But it does seem a little repetitive just because it's getting better and better each time.
Another big topic.
There's a lot.
Another big topic just released. 7, and I count them 7 college players on the preliminary roster for Team Canada. When have you never has that happened before? 7 college players on the preliminary roster for Team Canada.
Yeah.
World Juniors. That shows you a shift in
and
dynamic.
McKenna. Yep, McKenna and Smith from Penn State. We were talking about them taking a break. They might not even have enough of a roster at this point. Good for them. But let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we're also going to talk about some of these other stories, winners and worriers, teams that have been winning and teams that have got to worry about things. But before that, 2 things. One, this is also a video podcast on YouTube, youtube.com/USCHO. Like and subscribe. And we're sponsored by the NCAA Division I Men's Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Las Vegas.
I'm Cole Caulfield, and I played college hockey.
I'm Adam Fox, and I played college hockey.
I'm Jake Gensel, and I played college hockey.
I'm Kel McCarr, and I played college hockey.
Whether you are a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey.
All right, we're back. I said winners and warriors before I said warriors, but there are warriors and worrying warriors, I suppose, in there. But comparing the preseason poll with last week's poll, because the poll had not come out when we were recording, and also the NPI, which, again, worry for me is when it's really going to get some legs. But let's see who's lived up to the hype, who's over-delivered, and who is causing a little agita amongst the fan base. first half winners, outperforming preseason expectations. The first one on that list, sorry to say, since we just talked about it, is Dartmouth. They went from also receiving votes to in the top 10 in the poll, not up where their NPI is, as voters probably recognizing that, but Dartmouth is in there. Let me mention like three others, and we can kind of go through them. Minnesota State, middle of the pack to near the top. We've got Northeastern, kind of off the charts, but you get in a good goaltender, and that makes a big difference. And they are now 12th in the poll going into last weekend, and number 12, even with the split with UMass. And Miami went from 3 wins to top 20 in the NPI and on the edge in the poll. So those are some teams to be excited about. I mean, what really stands out there? I think Miami is maybe almost as big a story as Dartmouth this season.
I've liked the Miami story, and I want to watch it continue to play out. That's one of the biggest parts of it is, what they did going over to Belfast and Northern Ireland and winning that tournament over there. That's a big accomplishment. Now we have to see it play out in the NCHC. I'm really, every weekend, that's one of the teams I look at, Miami. What are they doing each weekend? So as we watch them in NCHC play, let's see if they can maintain any momentum. I like this list though. These are the teams that we missed. These are the Dartmouths. Minnesota State, I don't know that we missed them. Northeastern, we definitely, I think, missed them preseason. They've played really well with Lautenzacker and Sigurdsson in goal, so they're getting the good performances. I think that this list is a good one to show where everybody that votes in these polls, how much we missed.
Well, we missed one more that we missed, and that's Minnesota Duluth. Throw them in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nobody saw Duluth having the start they had, and now that they're getting into NCHC play, they're showing that non-league start is carrying into league play.
Interesting for me, I will say 100% interesting to me, the love that your poll, and I'll say your poll because I don't vote on it, doesn't give Dartmouth. That Dartmouth shouldn't be in a top 3 to 4 spot, because if it was any other team and they're number 1 in the NPI, pairwise, whatever RPI, alphabet soup, whatever you want to call it, they'd be number 1 overall, without a doubt. So I'm interested to see why they're not getting the love with the poll that they probably should deserve. I'm also Miami right now, they've done a great job non-conference. In conference are 6. They've got 5 total points in conference. They are still at the bottom of their conference. They need to start winning conference games. I think they've done the story, but winning in Belfast, the winning a lot in non-conference to start. But right now, they need to start winning in conference to start showing a lot more where they're going. Great story at Minnesota Duluth. So I start from start to finish, a whole rundown there. Minnesota State's always going to go. Northeastern always should be there. Interesting for Northeastern, not a lot of home games because they're going to be bouncing around. How that's going to affect things. Yep, one left in Matthews Arena. I watched yesterday. A lot of different storylines with that group of people you talked about there. So knock it all down, Jimmy, because you want to.
No, the only thing I'm going to say is I'll just kind of reference the poll. I think when you look at the Dartmouth gap in the poll, it's a big one. I know it's not that big on my ballot. I think last week I had them 6. This week I had them 4, if I'm correct. I might have had them 3 or 5. I'm not totally sure. But it's been hard to get them into that top because of the top teams still playing well. But I think if you took any team from the CCHA, if this is Bowling Green that started 10-0, we wouldn't be seeing them number 1 in the poll. We wouldn't see them even maybe top 3 in the poll. So I Air Force, I remember the hot start they had going back almost 2 decades now. And they were, I think, 18-1 at one point, and they got up to maybe number 4 or 5 in the poll, but I don't remember them being a lot higher than that. So I don't think that the poll just misses out on respecting the teams that are not brand names.
Well, and I think also maybe voters in the poll weigh the strength of the league a little bit more than the NPI might factor in. So I think that's part of it also. Some honorable mentions in the first half winners are teams that beat expectations in the NPI. And again, that's going to settle out. I'm going to keep emphasizing that. But Augustana at number 13, Holy Cross at number 22, and Bowling Green at number 28. None of them anywhere near some preseason buzz. I guess one poll point for Bowling Green, so somebody had them number 20 on their ballot. Those are teams to look out for. I know Holy Cross is strong, and Augustana has been a great story. This is a great story for College Hockey Inc. to tell people when schools are looking to start a new program. Look at where Augustana is so quickly, how they've become a real competitor.
Yeah, I love the Augustana storyline. I'll admit that until this weekend, I had the ride back from Orono on Friday as a passenger, and I'm starting to read through NPI and start looking at numbers. I didn't even realize Augustana was that high. So that great job by Augustana to be in there. I'm gonna throw another team in there that I left off. UNH, they swept Maine this weekend on the road. They moved from 45 to 25 with those 2 wins in the NPI. That's a massive jump. They're right in the middle of the conversation now.
Yeah, and Maine has really plummeted in the NPI from that, and they're one of our first half worriers relative to the preseason hype. Maine was top 10 preseason, and now that's not looking so great. They've lost a lot of games at home, which is uncharacteristic for the Black Bears. Boston University started out number 2 in the country until they are right on the bubble in the NPI and right on the bubble for the poll itself. Minnesota, I think everybody expected a lot more out of the Golden Gophers. And how about Providence and UConn? I mean, the Huskies, I think, are at the top for Hockey East in the NPI, but that's nothing to write home about right now. That's a low bar. These are all teams that have been underperforming, and you could have thrown Boston College in there before this weekend, but I think maybe they've turned some stuff around. What about these teams? Are these teams that have got to worry about whether they're going to make the tournament?
Well, you got Boston College at 16, so they did change things around. Boston College is at 16, Providence at 19, Connecticut at 20. So there is a group of people kind of all over the map right there. So you do have a group of people there. So with that, I think that you're going to see some jump and some movement around there. Minnesota is going to be able to climb a little bit with how high the Minnesota or with the Michigan State, all of those are in the world. So I think that there's some movement available to those, but they do have to get on the horse. They got to start winning and quickly. There is movement available for those teams, but they got to win. I think there's more movement available for Minnesota than there is the Hockey East teams.
Yeah, I'll give you some data to support that. Minnesota has 3 losses in their last 7, and they've still moved from 41st in the MPI to 27th. So you can lose in the Big Ten, maybe even in the NCHC, and still not drop as much. You lose in Hockey East right now. We just saw it with Maine. It's dangerous. If you take 0 points out of a weekend, you can get into trouble very quickly. It's all that whole list you read, Ed, is mostly Hockey East teams. It just supports, I guess, what we've been saying now for a month, that Hockey East is of the 3 biggest leagues. They are the ones that have the biggest concerns as we start to head into Christmas and into the second half.
Well, that's just about going to wrap things up for this edition. On Wednesday, we're going to dig a little bit more into the poll versus the NPI in our Upon Further Review. This podcast is available on YouTube at youtube.com/USCHO, and we're sponsored by the NCAA Division I Men's Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Las Vegas. Go to ncaa.com/mfrozen4 for tickets. For Jim Connolly, for Derek Schooley, I'm Ed Trefsker, and this has been USCHO Weekend Review.